Welcome back to a slice of news where I cut you off a slice of news. Voters in Virginia voted yes to passing a redistricting referendum backed by Democrats yesterday. It wasn't a landslide victory, though. The vote came down to about 51.4 to 48.6. So it was a win, but it was a win by a very narrow margin. But I think from the start, that was pretty much what was expected. But a narrow win is still a win, and it has passed. What this will mean is that a constitutional amendment has been approved that would temporarily bypass the state redistricting committee and redraw the state electoral map earlier than it's typically done. This new map takes 4 districts away from Republicans, now making a 10-to-1 Democrat-Republican split. Democrats in Virginia already had a majority, but now they basically have the entire state. Unsurprisingly, a lot of people on the right took issue even with the idea of passing this in the first place. Unsurprisingly, they didn't want Republican districts to be erased off the map in Virginia. But it's not as if this is coming out of nowhere. Republicans have drawn new maps in Texas, Missouri, North Carolina, and are trying to do it again in Florida. So it seems like Republicans aren't against stacking the deck. They're just against someone else getting to do it instead of them. If anything, this is really just leveling the playing field a little bit more. And we can call it redistricting, but what it is gerrymandering. And on the whole, I'm against gerrymandering. It seems unfair because it is unfair. And the Democratic Party agrees, which is why back in 2019 they introduced the For the People Act, which amongst other things attempted to end gerrymandering by requiring states to use independent commissions to draw congressional district lines. It was passed by the House 234 to 193, but the Republican-controlled Senate at the time said no, and it did not pass the Senate. Congressional Democrats tried to reintroduce it 2 years later, where it passed again in the House by a narrow margin of 220 to 210, but again, Senate Republicans said no, this time using a filibuster to prevent it from passing. So if Republicans aren't liking this result coming out of Virginia, they only have themselves to blame. They had a chance to prevent this from even being possible, but twice Republican lawmakers said no. If Republicans refuse to give up their ability to disenfranchise Democratic voters by drawing weird congressional maps that eliminate their voice in certain states, they cannot cry foul when their own strategy is used against them. If they want to play dirty, they can't cry when Democrats jump in the mud with them. I may not be the biggest fan of gerrymandering, but I was very happy to see that enough Virginia voters voted yes to pass the referendum, because Democrats are going to need every arrow in their tool belt when it comes to the midterms to take back control in Congress and stop a lot of the Republican agenda that we've been forced to endure since President Trump took office again, and his Republican sycophants in Congress have basically allowed him to get away with anything and everything. So while a lot of that damage has already been done, hopefully this is a sign Democrats are going to have a chance to right the ship come November, and at least keep things from getting much worse. And to say Republicans are taking this result poorly would be an understatement. I've seen things like, this means that they will impeach Trump, they will shut down all his military and border actions, defund ICE, stop all fraud investigations, they will bury the Epstein files forever. 100% of what you wanted will end. Trump will be a lame duck. Well, I'll give them, they probably will try to impeach and convict President Trump once Democrats take control of Congress, and they will probably try to defund ICE. And during the remaining part of his presidency, President Trump will be a lame duck. That is all probably right. But when they're saying stop all fraud investigations, I assume investigations against Democrats, because Republican fraud apparently seems fine, and they definitely don't mean stopping investigations into that. But bury the Epstein files? It's Democrats that have wanted the Epstein files to be released the most, and it's Republicans, such as former Attorney General Pam Bondi, that has kept the files from being released in the first place, literally defying the law to do so. So if Republicans angry with this result want to find a party to blame for burying the Epstein files forever, it's not the Democrats they should be pointing that finger at, it's their own. And of course there's the usual, oh, this is a Democratic power grab and disenfranchisement of Republican voters. But of course these same voices are fine with it when the shoe is on the other foot and it's Democrats that are being disenfranchised, and Republicans that are power grabbing. When you get down to it, they're fine with cheating to win as long as they're the only ones doing it. They've shown they don't want electoral fairness, they just want to win. So whatever it takes to secure that win is on the table as far as they're concerned. They bring a gun to a sword fight and then get mad when the other side pulls out their own gun. And if all these angry voices want to be mad about gerrymandering, they should be. There's a lot to be angry about in that respect. But they can't have it be only one-sided, and they can only be mad about it when it's their side that's losing because of it. It's also interesting to note that when they got mad at Virginia redistricting and California redistricting, those were both put to the voters, and the voters in those states said yes. All the other Republican redistricting came by committee. They didn't ask the voters to approve it, they just did it. So even when they do it, Democrats do gerrymandering more fairly and democratically. Voices on the right have also fallen on the tried and true the vote was rigged. That's the only reason we lost. Officials need to look into why those Democrats won and we didn't, something I'm sure they learned from their favorite president. Republicans really do seem to believe that the only legitimate win is a Republican win, and if a Democrat wins something, it must be because of malfeasance or trickery, not because voters just preferred Democrats more. But I suppose if you're the party of dishonesty, you see dishonesty everywhere, and assume that if you were going to be dishonest, the other side must also have wanted to be dishonest too. This is yet another example of Republicans hating to lose. I mean, nobody likes to lose, but they seem to never be able to accept defeat gracefully. It's always, well, they must have cheated. There must have been some irregularity. It can't be that we just lost. Why don't they consider how losing is unfair to us? But like I said at the start, this was not some sort of mass victory where you could say, well, these results seem a little suspicious because look at how massively the yes votes came in. It was basically 51-48. It was a narrow win. A win by a small margin like that certainly feels a lot more natural, so it makes it a lot harder to find fault in. The only reason those on the right are trying to is because they lost. Had the numbers been reversed and the amendment had failed, they would just tell Democrats to suck it up. They lost. But I suppose when you want consistency, you don't turn to Republicans, because if there's one thing that is consistent with them, it's their inconsistency. Things are only fair when they are benefiting, and it's unfair when they don't. Even if the results out of Virginia are distasteful to many on the right, the reality is that it was a pretty big win, not just for Virginia Democrats or even the Democratic Party as a whole. It's really a win for the country, even if it doesn't sound like it to some. Our current president has shown himself to be dangerously erratic and out of control, and those of his own party have shown they have no desire to rein him in at all, allowing our captain to wildly spin the wheel and steer us into incredibly dangerous waters. So if congressional Republicans have shown themselves to have no desire or no ability to right the ship, it's up to Democrats to take control and do it for them. And getting these 4 additional congressional seats in Virginia is a step in that direction. If Republicans won't save the country from the bad leader we have, it's up to Democrats to do it for them. And I was initially unsure Virginia was going to manage to get the yes vote to win. It was on some real shaky ground because there was a lot of vote no propaganda out there, and I can only imagine the tens of millions of dollars they poured into the campaign to convince Virginia voters to vote no on redistricting. And I'd be willing to bet a lot of it worked, because if you look at the map of where all the no votes came from, a majority are from those rural areas that have shown themselves to be very susceptible to conservative propaganda that tells them to vote against their own interests. It definitely did not feel like a guaranteed win, so I'm very glad that when it all came down to it, the yes votes won and the amendment passed. I was feeling pretty tense for a while, but I definitely let out a sigh of relief when it was clear that it was going to pass, and the yes votes had it. And yes, a 10-to-1 electoral map doesn't sound fair, because it's not. But the reality is that if they had the opportunity, Republicans would gladly take a 10-to-1 Republican control map. So if a massively lopsided map like this is what it takes to bring sanity back into our government, I will reluctantly take it. One of the reasons Democrats lose as much as they do is because they're always about sticking to the rules, decorum, and the way things are supposed to work, while Republicans feel there are no rules, and whatever it takes to win is fine. So if anything, this is just Democrats playing their own game. So if Republicans want to say that anything to get an advantage is fair game, then this should be fine. I don't think politics should be about who can stack the deck more in their own favor, but if Republicans have shown that they have absolutely no issue with stacking the deck as much as possible, Democrats have to then do so a little bit as well. And let's remember, as I said before, Democrats put legislation forward to say, hey, lets nobody get to stack the deck. They put it forward twice, and twice they were rejected by Republicans. Democrats tried to make it so it could be fair for everyone, and Republicans said, no, if we can't cheat at this game, we don't want to play the game at all. So if Republican voters don't like what happened in Virginia, they have only their own party to thank for that. And I would say I hope Republicans learn a lesson from this, but if there's one thing you can count on is that Republicans and learning never go together. Alright guys, that'll be it for this episode of A Slice of News. I've been your host, Mr. Slice, and until next time when I cut you off, another Slice of News. And don't forget to rate and review the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find it.
Thank you.